checking yourself, checking your ego at the door and being like, hey, this is something you need to buckle down and do. How did you build that?
To be honest, I haven't. You know what I mean? To be honest, I haven't. I'm still, learning that.
Okay.
How to check, and this is just transparency and honesty. I haven't learned that, right?
Mhm.
Not saying I won't, but what I have learned is the knowledge of being able to lean on others on how to react a certain way, how to act a
Okay.
certain way. You know what I mean? How to, because I think a lot of times is that ego is self-sabotage. Ego can be prideful. It could be stubbornness. It could be something that people feel like it's, just on me. But
Yeah,
and,
that's
and,
something I
and
struggle with.
yeah, and to say that no one will ever, know how to check that at the door. But I do think, having that ego, having that issue, having that it's always in the back of your mind, right? Because
Hmm.
you're trying, and I look at it from a perspective of, you know, people may say we're egomaniacs with this and that. I look at it as if maybe we're thinking 2, 3 steps forward, right?
Hmm.
And and I think sometimes that could be a mistake because when you're thinking 2 steps forward, you, you're not a mind reader. You can't tell the future, right? So I think a lot of that mindset that, and I'm speaking for myself because I go through it during my personal life, is that we try to avoid certain walls, certain
Hmm.
failures to try to predict what's going to happen instead of just
Hmm.
letting it go, letting it flow, right?
Yeah.
And that also goes into, the negativity portion. A lot of times it's borderline toxic and negative, right? To where you're trying to analyze and project and predict failure. So
Yeah.
you you don't like, no, 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 I'm not going to do that, right? And then, if you have a partner that's kind of going that same um, road, you try to avoid that, and that brings conflict. So my point is that there are times where, yes, you have to check your ego at the door, but at the same time, it's not about really checking your ego at the door, or it's more about allowing yourself to be open to not hitting that wall, but bringing yourself to the point where it's like, all right, let's do this again, right? It's almost
Yeah.
like, don't jump in that deep side of the pool. You almost drowned, but sometimes you have to be able to jump again to understand
Yeah.
the true meaning, right? So
Hmm.
my advice is for all of that is that I don't think we solely check our ego at the door. I think it's being able to be open, being able to say that, okay, you know, we can't predict the future. We have no idea how certain things are going to go, right?
Hmm.
Tomorrow, somebody could come to the door about an opportunity. When I'm going to say, no, I've done that before. No, thanks.
Hmm.
You know, it's all about being open, right? And that's a part of checking your ego, but it's about being open, trustworthy, um, and just, you know, cutting out kind of the toxic and the negativity, because that's where it all boils down to, right? You got to be able to be aware of, ah, you know, you just gotta let it go, man. And that's one of the things I deal with, right? So you're not the only one trying to check your ego at the door, because believe me, ego is going to keep ringing the doorbell. Just think of it that way.
Yeah, it always
You know what I'm
shows
saying?
up,
It always
I
shows up.
mean,
Yeah. And
it's
think of it this way: when it shows up, that's usually when an opportunity is presented itself, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it usually because you because nobody, we had this we um you remember the alpha versus beta conversation we had.
Yeah. Yeah. What a
And
conversation.
yeah, and when one of the conclusions we drew during that conversation was that nobody walks into a specific situation saying that they're an alpha or a beta. They walk into a situation saying, I'm going to make the best decision for myself with the
Mhm.
options that I have, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the options that may get, you know, the things that we account for when we're considering those options are our ego, are what are the potentials for failure and all of that sort of stuff, right? But I think one of the things that I'm constantly find myself thinking about is um, living the ideal, so to speak, right? Where we want to, one of the things that all of us are trying to do at some level or another is getting out of our own way and start living to the best of our potential, the best of our ability, the best of our, you know, the best of our idea of who we should be, right?
Okay.
And sometimes, you know, and I think that's what part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you in terms of goal setting and realistic goals is because, you know, we we will set our ideal without considering those things. Oftentimes we'll consider our ego more often than not, but we won't consider the realism of, is this achievable, is this accomplishable, and what are the things that I have to put in and or sacrifice to achieve these things.